Hey everyone, struggling to take down those overpowered enemies in Anime Multiverse? Don't worry, you're not alone. If you've been feeling like your battles are more uphill than they need to be, chances are you're not rocking the top tier powers. And trust me, in this game, your power setup can make or break your journey through the multiverse. So why waste those hard-earned gems on powers that won't get the job done? Let's make every roll count. In today's video, we're diving into the ultimate Anime Multiverse tier list. Whether you're a seasoned player or just starting out, this guide will help you figure out which powers are worth chasing and which ones you should steer clear of. By the end, you'll be rolling like a pro and dominating your enemies with ease. Let's jump into it. I'm quickly moving on to the video and I'm ranking powers in Anime Multiverse. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching. The powers in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Kamehameha, Kick Course, Gum Gum, Ki Blast, Rasengan, Ceroblast, Kunai, and Highest Hachis. Alright, listen up, anime warriors. Let's talk about the powers in Anime Multiverse that are, well, let's just say they need a little training arc of their own. These are the D-tier powers. Fun to try out, sure, but not the ones you'd take to your final battle against the big bad. Let's dive in and see why they're chilling at the bottom of the leaderboard. First up, Kamehameha. It's iconic, it's flashy, it's got that long-range, high-damage vibe we love. But here's the catch. It comes with a cooldown longer than an anime filler arc. Yeah, you better hope your opponents are really bad at dodging while you wait for it to recharge. Not exactly the best when every second counts. Moving on to Kick Course. This one's got some surprising perks. Decent damage? Check. Good AoE? Double check. It's like that one side character in a shonen anime who shows up, does their thing, and then fades into the background. Solid, but not exactly earth-shattering. Now, Gum Gum is an interesting one. It brings decent damage, armor break, and a respectable cooldown to the table. Sounds good on paper, right? But in practice, it doesn't quite stretch to greatness. It's like Luffy without his crew. Fun to watch, but missing that extra punch. Let's not forget Ki Blast, the I'll hit you from over here, thanks move. Decent damage, solid AoE, and good range make it tempting, but oh boy, positioning is key. Miss your shot and you're left looking like a side character who just got KO'd in one hit. Ouch! And then there's Rasengan. Classic, reliable, but not groundbreaking. The damage is decent, but the armor break? Pretty underwhelming. It's like eating ramen without the toppings. Sure, it's still good, but where's the flavor? Finally, let's talk about Kunai and Highest Hachis. Kunai has a super low cooldown and some decent armor break, but the damage is practically non-existent. It's more of a love tap than an attack. Meanwhile, Highest Hachis is okay-ish, with decent damage and cooldown, but the poor armor break drags it down. They're the powers you pick when you're just messing around, not when you're going for glory. So, there you have it, the D-tier powers of Anime Multiverse. They're like that one background character who gets a few lines of dialogue before fading into obscurity. Fun to try out, but don't expect them to carry you through the big fights. Which of these have you tried, and do you think any of them deserve a promotion? Let me know in the comments. The powers in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Magma, Super Saiyan, White Ripple, Overdrive, and Fire Jutsu. Alright, let's dive into the good, the bad, and the Bernie in Anime Multiverse. We're talking about some C-tier powers today. Don't worry, these aren't the worst of the worst, but they're definitely a little meh in comparison to the bigger, badder powers out there. But hey, every power has its moment in the spotlight. Let's see if any of these might still have some tricks up their sleeves. First up, we've got Magma. Now, this one's pretty solid in terms of damage. You're looking at some great AoE, area of effect here, meaning you can melt through mobs and bosses alike. On top of that, it applies a burn debuff, so you're not just doing damage once, you're doing it over time. Sounds awesome, right? Well, it's not all sunshine and lava because it has a long cooldown. Like, you'll be waiting a while before you can unleash that fiery fury again, so you'll need to plan your attacks carefully. Next, let's talk about Super Saiyan. If you love punching stuff and want that extra boost, this one's for you. It buffs your punch damage by a solid 30%. That's no small number. However, and this is a big however, it has an incredibly long cooldown. We're talking about waiting forever before you get that punch in again. So while you might feel like a superhero when you land that power-up punch, you'll be sitting there twiddling your thumbs for a while before you can do it again. Moving on, we've got White Ripple. This one's more balanced with solid DPS, damage per second, and decent cooldowns. It's not a powerhouse, but it gets the job done. Unfortunately, it suffers from low armor break. This means you're not going to be shredding through those tanky enemies as fast as you might hope. It's one of those powers that works well in general, but if you're up against heavily armored foes, you might want to think twice before relying on it too much. Then there's Overdrive, which is definitely a fan favorite in the C tier, mostly because it balances out really well. It has great damage output, low cooldowns, and excellent armor break. So if you're facing those tough enemies with high defenses, Overdrive is your go-to. The best part? You won't be waiting forever to use it again. It's definitely one of the more reliable choices in this tier, even if it doesn't quite have the flair of an S tier power. Finally, we have Fire Jutsu. This power has all the right intentions but falls a bit short when it comes to damage and armor break. It has a long cooldown, which means you're going to be staring at the ground for a while waiting to use it again. It just doesn't pack the punch you might want when you need it most. Honestly, if you're looking for a power that does it all, this might not be the one. But hey, if you like the idea of flaming your enemies with a long cooldown, it's here for you. So there you have it, C-tier powers in Anime Multiverse. While some of these have their upsides, you're probably better off looking for something a little stronger to add to your lineup. But hey, if you're just starting out or looking to have some fun, these powers can still hold their own in the right situation. Keep experimenting and find what works best for you. The powers in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Bungee Gum, Solar Punch, Ackerman Flurry, Black Hole, and Space Ripper. Alright, let's dive into some of the B-tier powers in Anime Multiverse. These aren't your top-tier game-breaking abilities, but they still have their moments in the spotlight. First up, we have Bungee Gum. Now, this one's a bit of a mixed bag. On the plus side, it can bypass enemy shields, which is fantastic if you're up against tough opponents with high defenses. But when it comes to raw damage, well, it doesn't exactly blow you away. If you're looking to deal big hits, you might want to look elsewhere. Next, let's talk about Solar Punch. It's pretty decent when you're facing off against bosses. It does some solid damage. The problem, though, is that it just doesn't hold up compared to other mythic powers. It's kind of the underdog here. Sure, it has its uses, but in the grand scheme of things, there are better options for most situations. It's one of those powers you'll probably use when you need it, but it won't be your first pick. Then there's Ackerman Flurry. This one's got some charm. It delivers decent damage, and with a low cooldown, you can spam it pretty effectively. The downside, however, is that it's got very little AoE, area of effect. So if you're facing a lot of enemies, it's going to feel a little clunky to use. It's definitely not the most fluid power, and it takes a bit of getting used to, but if you've got the timing right, it can serve you well. Let's not forget Black Hole. This ability is a bit of a showstopper when it comes to damage output. It delivers excellent damage and covers a full AoE, which is a great advantage in chaotic battles. The only real downside is the lack of armor break. It's a powerful attack, but it doesn't do much in terms of breaking through tough enemy defenses. So while it can dish out the pain, it might struggle against enemies with high armor. Finally, we've got Space Ripper. This one stands out with great damage and a decent cooldown, making it a solid choice for consistent attacks. Plus, it comes with some armor break, so it's useful when you're facing armored foes. The balance here is pretty nice, and while it's not going to knock anyone out of the park, it holds its own quite well. It's the kind of ability you can rely on when you just need something solid and effective. So there you have it, a closer look at some of the B-tier powers in Anime Multiverse. They might not be the best of the best, but they've all got their place in the game. Whether you're using them strategically or just having fun with them, each one brings something unique to the table. Keep experimenting with these, and who knows, maybe one of them will surprise you. The powers in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Quake, Lightning Dragon, Blade Storm, Cruel Sun, Black Divider, and Dismantle. Let's talk about some of the best A-tier powers in Anime Multiverse. These abilities are perfect for players who want to dominate in raids, boss fights, or just need that extra edge when things get intense. Trust me, each of these powers brings something unique to the table, and if you're not using them, you might be missing out. First up, we've got Quake. This power is a game changer, especially when you're up against tough bosses. The armor break it provides is massive, which means those big, tanky enemies are going to be a lot easier to handle. If you're in a raid, Quake is pretty much a must-have for taking down the toughest foes. Then there's Lightning Dragon. This one is a fan favorite for a reason. It bypasses enemy shields, which is huge when you're dealing with enemies that rely on defense. Plus, it's fantastic in raids where you need to deal consistent damage without worrying about getting blocked by pesky shields. Now, let's talk about Blade Storm. If you love dealing massive damage, Blade Storm is right up your alley. It's an absolute powerhouse in terms of DPS, and it's got excellent AoE as well. Raids, Bladestorm shines here. It's perfect for taking down multiple enemies at once while keeping your damage output high. Moving on to Cruel Sun, we've got a power that applies a burn DOT effect, making it great for both bosses and large groups of enemies. Not only does it dish out decent AoE damage, but the burn effect really helps in prolonged fights, wearing down your enemies even after you've moved on to the next target. It's also one of the meta picks for raids because of that constant damage over time. If you're more into support roles, Black Divider should definitely be on your radar. This power isn't just about offense, it's got support potential too. It applies a curse debuff that increases the damage enemies take, making it perfect for bosses and teamwork-based fights. You can help your team crush enemies faster while still dealing some solid damage yourself. Finally, there's Dismantle. It's a solid choice for bosses, no doubt, but it doesn't hit as hard as some of the others on this list. While its damage output is lower, its utility in stripping away enemy defenses and weakening them can't be ignored. It's a good option for those who prefer strategy over raw damage. And there you have it, A-tier powers in Anime Multiverse. Whether you're focusing on DPS, support, or making sure you're the one taking down the biggest threats, these abilities have you covered. Let me know which one is your favorite in the comments below. The powers in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Emperor's Haki, Gate of Babylon, Lapse Blue, and Light Shower. Alright folks, let's dive into some of the absolute powerhouse abilities you can rock in Anime Multiverse. You know, the ones that make all the difference when you're facing those tough raids or really want to push the meta. We're talking about powers that shine in both solo and team play. If you're looking for abilities that will seriously elevate your game, you're in the right place. So, buckle up because we're about to break down some heavy hitters. First up, we've got Emperor's Haki. This one's an absolute beast, especially when you're up against non-boss enemies. The best part? You deal even more damage to them, which makes it a game changer for taking down waves of foes. If you're diving into raids, this is definitely a power you want on your side. The extra damage means you'll be slicing through enemies like they're butter. Seriously, if you're not using this in your raid lineup, you're leaving a lot of potential on the table. Then there's Gate of Babylon, which is just so solid overall. It's not the flashiest power, but it's got great utility with decent damage output. But here's where it gets spicy. The cooldowns are on point, and it comes with an armor break effect. That means you can really make a dent in tougher enemies, especially those with shields. If you're looking for versatility and the ability to control the battlefield a bit more, Gate of Babylon is a no-brainer. Let's not forget about Lapse Blue. This one is hands down a raid MVP. Its AoE damage is insane, and it does a ton of work when you're surrounded by mobs. If you want to clear the field quickly, this ability is going to save you time and effort. Not only does it deal a lot of damage, but its AoE ensures you're hitting everything in range. This is the kind of power that makes you feel like a raid boss yourself. Last but certainly not least, Light Shower brings some serious crowd control into play. Great AoE and crowd control abilities? Yes, please. When you need to handle large groups of enemies, this power is invaluable. It not only lets you deal with crowds, but it's also a fantastic pick for raids where you need to keep things under control while dealing damage at the same time. If you're all about that multitasking life, Light Shower is definitely one to grab. So there you have it. Whether you're hunting for that extra damage, needing to break through shields, or just trying to clear waves of enemies, these abilities should definitely be in your arsenal. Each one brings something unique to the table, and depending on your playstyle, you'll find a perfect fit among them. Just remember, when it comes to raiding and pushing the meta, these powers are your best friends. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.